Hey guys, welcome to the Woods. Today, treat for me. This is my first out of province actually guest, and with us today we've got Joe Kennedy. Joe Kennedy is a deer biologist for the Fish and Wildlife Branch for the New Brunswick Natural Resources and Energy Department. Joe, I asked Joe onto the show today to discuss their New Brunswick Nuisance Deer Management Plan. And this is something that intrigues me. I grew up in St. John, New Brunswick, and this sort of urbanized hunt or urban hunt for deer is something that I want to learn more about, and I've been getting a lot of questions. So, Joe, if you wouldn't mind, first, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah.
Much appreciated it.
Okay.
How did the New Brunswick Nuisance Deer Management Plan kind of start out? What were the origins of it? The necessity, I suppose.
Yeah, we recognize that deer numbers were growing in the Kennebecasis Valley really since the mid-2000s. Kennebecasis Valley incorporates St. John into Rothsay, Quispamsis, and up to Hampton. And that valley is quite mild, allows for good growing conditions for deer. And because it's primarily urban, there are not a lot of natural predators, not a lot of coyotes. So deer had a very easy life. So the population really expanded throughout the valley to the point where there were an awful lot of car accidents, and people's properties, vegetation was getting hit by all of the higher numbers of deer. So they were the communities were starting to complain about nuisance deer issues, like I say, in the mid-2000s. And then around 2010, the mayors of Rothsay, Quispamsis, and Hampton started talking to the Minister of Natural Resources to try to control the deer numbers. And it took a while for us to develop a system. We did initiate a pilot project around 2011, 2012 to test it. And then we implemented a nuisance deer program in 2014. So we've been running for 7 years.
For 7 years. Okay.
Yes, and that was primarily based on requests directly from the communities, from Rothsay, Quispamsis, and Hampton. The three mayors were effectively lobbying the minister at the time, and the minister agreed to introduce the system. The system that we run is a nuisance deer management assistance program. That's the title. And we've borrowed that concept from New England states where they've been running similar programs for a while now.
Okay. And now, so I suppose this is when this all sort of came to be. I mean, obviously that it was wonderful that the communities were reaching out to your Department of Natural Resources, and that's what you want. You want the communities to want assistance before you go in and try and force anything on them. So what were some of the considerations, I suppose, as far as with an urban deer hunt? I mean, being a bow hunter myself, I assume that when you guys were looking at down in New England, most of these were bow/crossbow type programs for harvest. Those were the only legal weapons, I imagine.
Yes, for the most part. It's not the only legal weapon. We do allow firearms in places where properties are large enough, and there are some properties that are large enough. However, we have reduced the discharge distances or the safety zones around the landowner's house. For archery equipment, but not for firearms. So just to back up a bit and to explain the system a little bit.
Please do.
Yeah, the system is specifically designed to allow landowners to protect their property by removing extra deer from their land. So it's all landowner driven. So a landowner will apply. Actually, they apply directly to the town offices to participate, and if they're residents of that community, then they submit those applications to Natural Resources, and then we assess the property for safety concerns, as well as a number of deer to remove. So if you are a landowner, we may issue you 5 permits. So though each permit allows you to harvest or remove 1 female deer from your property, but each permit has to be allocated to individual hunters. So it's just 1 permit per hunter per year. So if you receive 5 permits, the landowner, of course, can keep 1 for himself, but can also distribute those remaining permits to people that he trusts to hunt on his land. And the point here is that, as I mentioned, we have 0-meter discharge safety setbacks from the landowner's house. So you're allowed to use archery equipment, bow or crossbow, from the landowner's doorstep. However, we still maintain 100-meter buffers around all of the neighboring homes.
Right.
And so that's for bow and crossbow. However, if in those cases where the properties are large enough to use firearms, then we maintain the regular 400-meter discharge distances from all homes, including the landowner's house.
That's
so the thing about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I just think
the thing about New Brunswick.
That's the first time I've heard it that way, and I like that it's not just a bow hunting urbanized hunt. That it's hunting, and then there are certain little aspects that you've made changes to in order to, I suppose, make it easier to get into some of these smaller areas. But it's a hunting season, just like a hunting season, for the most part, in the areas that you can, except for the nuisance tags are an extra tag, if you will, for some hunters.
Exactly. Yeah, and that raises a good point in that this is during the deer hunting season only, so it's not outside of the regular hunting period.
Right.
I'm
taking you off a little bit. That's
you interrupted me.
I unfortunately do that too often.
Oh yes. So the point that I wanted to make was that in New Brunswick, hunting is permitted within towns and cities, and we don't have any further setbacks from within the communities, just other than our regular discharge distances that I'd mentioned. So by us lowering the discharge distance for archery equipment around the landowner's house, that allows some hunting opportunity within these communities. Of course, where you have subdivisions that are, with houses that are on quarter-acre lots, very tight, you're not going to have a lot of opportunity to hunt there. Yeah. However, in the more remote or on the communities where they have more dispersed houses, that's where we're seeing some benefit in removing the female deer, and it's just for female deer only.
And that's it. It's an antlerless tag only, which for population control, most hunters realize is the only way to go. So yeah, indeed. So take me through a little bit. I know that you mentioned that it's the property owners that drive this. As a property owner, you said that I can go to the city, correct? To the municipality and apply for so many, apply to have my property, hunted upon, and that's my choice as a property owner. How does it get assessed as far as, how many tags and how many hunters? How does that work? Is that through DNR? Is that through your department?
Yeah, yes. So we have a fact sheet that we distribute to the communities, and it's on our website, that describes the general system. And for the most part, you're looking at properties that have larger than 1 acre, but it's that 100-meter separation from the adjacent homes is the important part. So once that is determined, and of course the property has to be within the respected municipality. Right. So once we have received application from the town office, DNR will visit the property, take a look at the size and the distances from the neighboring homes, and talk to the landowner and see roughly how many deer are coming onto the property. For the most part, the majority of landowners that I've been dealing with are very conservative in the number of deer that they want to remove. So for if somebody has 5 acres, they're not asking for 20 permits. They're asking for 2 or 3. Sure. And generally, it's the landowner and friends and family of the landowner that's participating in this. That's exactly what we want to see, is because they do have to have some trust in the people that are hunting on the land, so that they don't do any silly action.
Sure.
And it's been working. It's been working very well. We do have some larger properties, greater than 100 acres within the communities that allow firearm hunting, and they may receive up to 20 permits. And in those cases, we discuss with the landowner and the hunters about scheduling. So we don't want to have all 20 hunters out on the property at the same time. Usually they're trying to operate out of the same tree stand, for example. So we do ensure that there's scheduling, respect among the hunters and the landowner too.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. So I suppose now we're talking about the Kennebecasis Valley in this particular case. This has been the longest running urban hunt, wrong word, nuisance deer program.
Control.
Yeah, control. Hey, how you also have two other areas right now, sort of in that what I don't know if you call it that southern region of New Brunswick, I believe. What are the others that you have, and how long have they been running?
Yes, St. Andrews has been operating for the last 4 years, I believe, and St. Andrews has even more milder conditions than does the Kennebecasis Valley. Very, very mild, very rich environment, and a lot of deer, and in a smaller community. Yeah, so in that system, in fact, we've been allowing 2 permits per hunter. So one hunter can obtain 2 permits. So in cases where, and this is also to help landowners too, so that they have fewer hunters to deal with. They develop these relationships with hunters, and in these smaller land bases, the smaller lands that they have, we may issue 6 permits, and they'd have, of course, 3 hunters. But I was surprised that there was less interest among hunters to shoot more than 1 deer. The majority of hunters are, content with shooting 1 female deer, and then they have the regular license on top of that, right, so they can use as they wish. But the allocation of 2 tags hasn't been as popular as I was expecting. Oh. So that's St. Andrews, and then also for the last 2 seasons we've been operating in a neighborhood in St. John. This is the first time that we've had a city participate in this. Within the city of St. John, Milledgeville is a neighborhood that has a high density of deer. So we had separated that neighborhood and allocated some tags, not a large number, but we've been issuing tags. I think we harvested 8 deer out of Milledgeville this past season.
Okay. And
so those are the primary areas: the Kennebecasis Valley portion of the St. John City, and St. Andrews. And then, of course, we have an agricultural nuisance deer control program that is across the province. But for the most part, it's the apple growers that are utilizing that the most.
Okay, well, that's interesting to hear. I know that we have something similar to that for the agricultural side of things for our farmers here in Nova Scotia as well. I just find it, again, fascinating, because I grew up in St. John, New Brunswick, and I went to school in Milledgeville. And I think I look around in Milledgeville, and there would be some larger green spaces, and then communities with very, very tight, smaller lots. I can see where, are all of these programs sort of evolving as far, I mean, I imagine they are, how many deer are coming out, how successful it is in making, or has it been something that you guys kind of, it fits the program and the program works as such? Joe, do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. We the only modification that we've had to the program so far is the addition of the 2 tags in St. Andrews.
Right.
In that smaller land base of St. Andrews, was recognized that we needed to harvest more deer by allocating more tags per hunters, and that's beneficial in St. Andrews. So that's the only modification that we've done so far is allowing the two-tag system. Every year we seem to be, excuse me, in the Kennebecasis Valley, the number of tags that we're allocating is stabilized. We're putting out between 350 and 400 tags a year, and the landowners we're not really changing or seeing a significant increase or change in the number of landowners that are participating. So I think that we've made contact with the people that have properties large enough to hunt, and those that are willing to have hunters on their land. There's not a lot more individuals out there that are willing to join on now.
Sure. And I do like that it is the property owner that gets to decide. I admit that's something that I like specifically about the program as you describe it. Now from the biology side of it, give us a little bit of an idea. What type of numbers do you need to be removing from a particular area, Joe, that makes a program deemed perhaps more successful or less successful? What are some of the goals that you guys are trying to attain?
Yeah, specifically we're looking at trying to remove 30% of the female deer, the breeding portion of the deer in the population of the herd. So through our population modeling and from information from New England, it seems that by removing a third of the breeding females, you can really stagnate or reduce population growth in a community. So that's what we're trying to attain. We're attaining that in St. Andrews. We're not 100% certain if we're at the 30% mark in Quispam, Sisson, Rothesay, and Hampton. That's the Kennebecasis Valley area, because we don't. It's harder to survey the deer throughout the Kennebecasis Valley, so we don't have as accurate numbers of pre-post density estimates. We do have those in St. Andrews, and we're getting both. We're at the 30% mark in St. Andrews. I can't really say if we are or not here in the Kennebecasis Valley. I believe that we have stemmed population growth in the Kennebecasis Valley. We're not seeing a significant increase, but unfortunately not a significant decrease either in the KV.
Right.
So I think we're on top of population growth, and if we want to, if there's more interest in reducing the population more, then we'd have to go to probably a multi-tag system like we have in St. Andrews.
Right. And that's something that I suppose you'll hear from the community on a little bit.
Right.
The community seems happy, correct? I mean, they seem like numbers are stemmed, like you said, and not growing, and that is successful in itself. And then it's just a matter of making decisions, community-based decisions and biology-based decisions together, hand in hand, and working towards an end. Yeah. Is there anything that perhaps we've not hit on that you'd like to mention, Joe?
Yes, I wanted to mention about some of the things that we expect from a community before they can participate. So we do have some criteria that communities have to meet. For the first step, a community has to be incorporated in that there has to be a mayor and town council. So for unincorporated areas, we call them local service districts. Unfortunately, they're not able to participate in our program. So we do need to have elected officials that can determine or speak for the community. The next step is that town council survey the community. We need to see democratic support within the community for the program. So we require that the communities do a survey of all of the residents and then attain greater than 50% support within the community. So once that's proven, so once we have documentation of support from the community and the mayor and town council have supported to request or implement the program, then they can apply to natural resources for the program. Right. We also require that communities initiate a do not feed the deer bylaw, so that there's no feeding within the communities. We want to ensure that there's some non-lethal options implemented first to discourage deer from coming into the community. And of course, if you have a bunch of people feeding deer within the community, drawing deer within, that's counterproductive to what you're trying to do.
That's right.
And we also request that if there are any bylaws that prohibit people from fencing their properties, and some communities don't like to have fences on the lands, we request that people have that ability to fence off their property, protect their property through fencing, so that
as another non-lethal means.
Another non-lethal technique to protect property. And we are seeing that more and more commonly with people putting up deer fencing. Now you can buy polypropylene deer fencing that's inexpensive, easy to put up, and it's quite effective, of course. And if you have a fair amount of money spent on landscaping and ornamental gardens, flowers and shrubs, you want to protect that. And we are seeing more and more individuals protecting their property through fencing.
Through that.
Finally, we do request, as I mentioned earlier, that the towns act as the receiver of the applications. So the residents go to the town to apply for the program, and then the town will check through the PIDs, the property identification number, to ensure that the landowner, the property is within the community.
Right. Okay. This has been fantastic, Joe. I'm so appreciative. I know that I understand how it works so much better than I did perhaps even a year ago, after having initial conversations. And I had John Kraft, who you're familiar with, speak to me a little bit. It wasn't the best audio, unfortunately, under that, but for those viewers that saw it, and that led me, of course, on to talk to Joe. And thank you once again, Joe, for taking the time today to speak with me. And for everyone in the Maritimes, it's lovely to hear some of the different options that are going, and sharing that information so that together we can do what's best and try to come up with the best options. So, Joe, thank you today. Anything you got? Yeah, I see the finger up.
Yeah.
Joe, go ahead.
I just did want to mention, though, just because I know that in New Brunswick, there's a lot of interest from the hunting community to participate in this.
Right.
And I wanted to mention that, this is a program designed for landowners to protect their property, and it's not really intended as a recreational hunt. Right. So there's a lot of individuals that do want to participate in this, and hunters can submit their names to the town offices, and they can put their names on the list. So for landowners who are seeking hunters,
right,
they can go and obtain that list, and then choose names off of the list, and then reach out to those individual hunters. But for the most part, the majority of cases are landowners choosing relatives and friends to hunt on their land, and they have the right to do that because it's their land, and they just want to have confidence that they have somebody that they can trust. That's
right. There's almost a little sort of almost like CV thing that you can send in your experience as a hunter, I believe it is, Joe, and have your name added to that list. And then if a property owner is looking for additional hunters, they can go to that list, read through a few kind of quick points on, and then make contact. And just because they call you doesn't mean that you necessarily, there may be an interview process that the property owner may want to do as well to make sure that you're the type of hunter that they want on their property. No, that's an excellent.
And the hope is that over time there's going to be a relationship built between the hunters and the landowner. And if a hunter does something that's not appreciated by the landowner, if the hunter, say, leaves gut piles behind or tracks up the land with a four-wheeler, then that individual might not get a tag the following year, and these kind of relationships do build over time, and that's what we're seeing now, and it's more, people are more content, of course, once they have people that they know and trust.
Yeah, and that's a good point, that it's not a one-off, is it? It's not something you do 1 year, and then the deer population goes down, and it's a magic pill, and the deer, all of a sudden stop reproducing. This is an ongoing, like you say, it's been 7 years ongoing in the Kennebecasis Valley, and you would see it. Maybe I should ask the question in a very open way. It's something that you'll see continue on for the foreseeable future. There's no real end date as far as you guys are concerned?
Correct. And that's the way we're viewing this. This is a long-term project where you have growing deer numbers, we're recognizing all across North America that deer are becoming more of an urban animal than ever before. This is occurring clear across the continent, and slowly communities are starting to learn to live with the deer. However, if you want to control deer numbers, then it's going to be a long-term project. You know, we receive a lot of requests from people who are anti-hunting advocates, for us to adopt non-lethal technique like trap and relocate.
Right.
And they don't recognize that, again, that would have to be a multi-year, every year occurrence, because you have deer migrating in every year. But trap and relocate projects are generally not accepted or respected throughout North America. There's been an awful lot of experiences with these trap and relocate programs, and have found there's a high mortality rate among the deer once they've been relocated.
Right.
So we'd rather, and of course there's a high expense to this too, but we'd rather, and most North American fish and wildlife jurisdictions would rather use hunters to participate in this, and the hunters are making use of the resource, and we're much more interested in using hunters to do that. And it's more of a win-win situation between the communities and the wildlife agency and landowners.
Yeah. No, I, if you don't mind, I think that is actually not a bad place to end our conversation today, Joe. Again, last time I'll say it, thank you so very much for joining us today. And guys and girls out there, if you're viewing and you have some questions, you know, post them up, and I may, you know, ask Joe if there's a question or two that perhaps I don't know. We might be able to get some information, and let's have more conversation about this. I am forever saying I wish there was more conversation amongst non-hunters and hunters, so that we can all try to understand each other a little bit better and come up with what's best for all of us. And I think that it's a way forward, and we're all looking for the same thing. Joe, thank you.
We are. Cooperation.
The cooperation, exactly. Thank you, Joe. We'll talk to you soon. All right, real quick roundup. I don't want to add a whole lot more onto that, other than to say, you know, I usually do a little segment thanking our guest, and Joe Kennedy this week was, thank you. Having you on really definitely gave us a real clear idea about how that the program works for the you know, controlled management plans in these urban areas. And I learned a great deal through my conversations with Joe, and I hope that anyone out there, New Brunswick or Nova Scotia or anywhere, perhaps was able to learn a lot about how that plan works. And some of, you know, there were a few numbers in there. I thought it was very interesting to learn about the, you know, the 30% of the breeding does, if that's what it takes, you know, to be able to remove that 30% in order to stem a growing population. That was a number that I had not heard before. So you know, those little things are important when we're having conversations about, you know, what type of management plan in these urban areas is needed, and what's needed in order to try and secure some type of success with the program. So thank you, Joe, for going over it with us, and I know that I learned a great deal. So if you got any questions, you know, hit me up. I try to answer anything that I'm able to answer, and if I don't have the answer, I will try my best to reach out to contacts to try and get you an answer. So thanks, guys. We'll see you all real soon. To the woods.